And welcome back. And we are starting off our conversation for today, focusing on Book Week. We have with us three representatives. We have Rolando Cocum, who is the Senior Research and Education Officer at the ISCR, the Institute for Social and Cultural Research. We have in the middle Montserrat, who is the publisher for Cubola Productions, and both of you are representatives of the Belize Book Industry Association as well. And as a part of our conversation, we'll be talking about a competition that was held. And we have the first place winner, Dino Gutierrez from Cayo. Good morning, everybody, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Well, I am very excited to have this conversation, and I think Kevin was asking off camera one of the very important points that we have to start off with. Do we still have a reading population? Who wants to start?
Well, I believe that people are reading, but they are not very much aware of the quality and quantity of books that are published here in Belize. So when you travel, if you travel, you come back with books and you order from Amazon. But we don't really have enough booksellers in every district that bring the books that people want to read, and that they should be reading in any case. I believe that parents buy children's books. That's probably the only time in their lives that they buy books for their children. Mm-hmm. But then they probably stop when they are 8 or 10 for some reason, or 12. Mm-hmm. So books are not a big part of our lives, of many people's lives, and they bring so much joy and information. It's lifelong learning. So it is something that needs to be fixed.
Yeah. And what of the value of locally produced books? I mean, what are we missing from not having a space where local books are being consumed in the way that they ought to be?
To me, it's like a mirror. You look yourself into a book and you find yourself there. And when you do that, you want to know more, and you want to read more, and you want to write as well. No? So this is one, I think, very important aspect of having local writers produced, and I know it's happening. And with the prize, I believe that this is a great future in terms of more people wanting to write.
Yeah. Montse, you've been in the book industry for so long, and I think you've definitely been exposed to a wide range of writers in Belize, and you get to see how many people are interested in publishing, at any given time. Mm-hmm. What would you say the current context is in terms of interest in publishing?
There is a great, I think, ignorance about what publishing is. We still get a lot of calls saying, would you print our book? And say, we are not printers, we are publishers. Mm-hmm. So what we need is more publishers, and that's what the Belize Book Industry Association is trying to get people interested and informed about what the process of publishing, because it's a big industry. Yeah. And there are millions of books, literally millions of books published, new books published around the world. Yeah. It's not something that happens here and there, it's an industry. And
so let's take an education moment. What's the difference between printing a book and publishing a book?
The process of publishing is taking a black and white page, a manuscript, that still, even if the author believes it's done, it needs peer review, it needs input from a number of people. No? Mm-hmm. So usually there is this conversation between author and publisher. And also you have to take into account all kinds of things, including marketing. What is the point of publishing a book if it doesn't sell? You want these people to read it, right?
Yeah.
So I think this is the whole process of designing. The type font, the legibility, the layout, the illustration, the cover. Mm-hmm. So this is what the publisher does.
There's a science behind this thing.
It is a science. It is a long learning process, but I believe there are many people in Belize that would love to be publishers. They just don't know yet.
Yeah.
I have a niece who has dedicated her life to writing books. She's particularly young, near authors, and she does a lot of her writing. I'd say 100% of it online. Mm-hmm. Do you still need a publisher when you're doing online or ebooks?
Oh yes. Yes, the process is exactly the same. The only thing is the end result is not on paper. but you still have to lay out. It's different with a novel. No, a novel you just write text, so you have to have less of, there are not that many decisions to be taken in a book that is all text. No, you just need a good cover and a good type font and a good layout. No?
And you're good.
And you're good. Yeah.
Now, so many, if I'm to think of some of the older books that have been published by local writers, so many of them have documented important parts of our history and culture. And I imagine for NICH, that is one of the areas that really makes this so important, because if I write a book of today's context, even if it's fiction and I use local events that are happening right now, I'm also contributing to history.
Right. Marlene, you're so on point there, and that is precisely the type of involvement that NICH wants to support, to see writers develop their artistic talents and to push us into new directions in thinking about our social realities, as you rightly say. And I think Dino, as well as all of our other artists, are able to do that in this year's publication. They are pushing us to think about new ways about migration that's happening, racism, class. These are some of the dynamics that these storytellers are able to get our attention in very creative ways, to think about how we can be a part of the process of change and in the building of our national identity. And so that is definitely our big focus when we support the Belize Book Industry Association.
Yeah.
But second to that, I think, is also the important aspect that Ms. Montserrat was saying, which is the fact that the industry itself has so much potential for the economy, and it's something that we really want to see leverage more and more.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, perhaps, is the continued need, I think, to be able to provide an avenue that we can recognize who the up-and-coming literary giants will be.
Yeah.
And that's very important, I think, with this prize. There is a cash prize that's given to the first, second, and third place winners. And in addition to that, through the support of Cubola Productions, they are able to get themselves published. And I think that's very paramount. And we have in front of us the 3 publications that we've had so far. And it's very exciting. And I have known Dino for several years now, and to see him win a prize, having studied history at the University of Belize and now venturing into flash fiction,
Yeah.
it's very, very encouraging to see the type of talents that we're able to recognize through this medium.
So you change the theme for the literary prize every year?
Yes.
For the type of writing that you
The
expect?
genre,
Yeah,
yes.
the genre, yeah. And flash fiction, what is that? Dino, you tell us.
The flash fiction is just a very short story, very brief. So you have to, all the themes that you want to incorporate, you have to just write it very creatively within that word limit.
Yeah. What prompted you to enter this competition?
I was a history student at the University of Belize, and in my last semester I took my 5 electives for my minor, and I had chosen to minor in literature. I had always liked reading. In high school I had developed an affinity for writing, and I thought that it was time for me to really challenge myself. So when I saw them advertising the competition, I decided right away that I would at least try. Mm-hmm. When I got home, I began to think of different things that I could write about, and I chose to write about the theme of national identity. Rolando scratched the surface, and I was very passionate about it because there were several reasons. One of them was, well, we know in 2016 there was the U.S. presidential election, and Donald Trump really capitalized on the fear that the American public had towards immigrants. And I began to wonder if we have our own version of xenophobia here in Belize, and I realized that yes, we do. We call Belize the jewel, and it is in fact a jewel. And one of the main reasons it is a jewel is because we have attracted various waves of immigrants over the years. And but we still have issues. Like there are still problems that exist, and one of them is a division that was created by colonialism, and that legacy is still prevalent. So I wanted to find a niche, and I focused on the Asian community here in Belize, and it's a very short story, but the themes that I incorporated were one, discrimination, racism. Well, the dominant one is national identity. And then 2, I touched a bit on class conflict and also cultural assimilation.
So wait, how long is this? Because that's a lot into one short
It's
story.
only 500 words, and that's why
500 words.
500 words. So I had to ensure that all those themes were incorporated very creatively.
So it's very interesting, the topic that you chose, and it's titled "We Are Belizeans."
We the Belizean.
We the
yes.
Belizeans,
Yes.
sorry.
So,
But thank you for the translation. So, you know, we don't talk about xenophobia in Belize enough.
We don't.
And it really only becomes a major issue, as we've seen recently with the union issues. Sometimes we hear about it in other sectors as issues arise. When you first published or wrote the piece and you read it over, were you uncomfortable at all that people would be offended that you're calling Belizeans racist or discriminatory, or having us feel that that's part of what we represent as well?
I did not feel uncomfortable because I thought that it was something that we need to address, and we are, like I said, we are a diverse people, and we are lucky that we haven't suffered from institutionalized racism in other parts of the world, such as Rwanda, Nigeria, even in parts of Central America where there were wars that wiped out an entire, well, not an entire, but a large part of a population and ethnic group. And that is something that we need to embrace. But at the same time, it doesn't eliminate the fact that we do have issues, and the fact why I focused on the Asian community particularly is we know that they have become very successful in business, and that has caused some people to become resentment towards them, but they have integrated into our society. The children attend our schools, they are increasingly running for electoral office, and we should recognize the contributions that they have made to our society. And go ahead, you have a question?
Yes. I'm just,
You're poking at a lot of thoughts in our mind right
yes,
now.
that's exactly. I mean, I'm fascinated that because sometimes we're critical of Belizeans that we're not very complex in our thinking. You know, we're very rudimentary in the way that we go about life. And I'm listening to you dissect a very complex matter that, I mean, we don't really give it the attention that it does. And that's, I guess, the value of the book, but of books and writing. But my question was really kind of a bit left field, which was, this was the one you settled on. But were there other options that you were thinking about? I should write about A, B, and C, and then you chose A, which eventually won. Were there other ideas that you were battling with of writing about?
Not really.
Not really?
You're very decisive. So I want to hear a little bit of the story in just a bit, but I want to hear from the association just how you go about making your selections. You had 27 entries in this year's literary competition, and that's fantastic. I mean, I think it shows that there is an interest perhaps that we weren't aware of. It did include the diaspora, you've told us that as well. But tell us about the selection process and the quality of the pieces that were submitted.
There were quite a few that could have made it, which is interesting because you know, it was not that we could only select 6. There were more. No, 3 of them were from the diaspora, and the other ones were from Belize. The selection, it goes through a jury. We have a jury that goes through all the materials. In this case, it was William Neal was in the jury, has been there in the past as well, and we have Derek Satchwell, and then Feline Suazo and myself. So it was very intense. Most of it was done over the internet, which was good because we all live in different places.
Yeah.
And finally, we just met one day, and that was a decisive day. And there was sometimes 100% agreement, which was very interesting. But then somebody will come in and say, "Look, have you noticed that this is innovative, for example, or this, you know, this is something that we never talk about, no?" Yeah. And so this is how it was selected, how the selections were.
What would you say is the overarching measure that you look at to decide who wins? Is it the topic? Is it just the flow of the story? What are you looking for?
We first of all look for literary quality,
Okay.
for the quality of the writing itself, no?
Yeah.
And so if it's not well written, well, you cannot get a prize, a literary prize, no? Other than that, it's a topic many times, the way it is approached. Sometimes in 500 words you can say so much, because all of this that you have been explaining, it's contained in images.
Yeah.
Sometimes just one line, no? So this is also very important, how well the title and the story how the title represents what is in the story, and synthesizes what is in the story.
So what stood out about Dino's story?
What is?
What stood out about Dino's story?
What stood out? The novelty, the things what you were mentioning, no one. Everybody says things, but the mother really goes deep into what it really is, We are very good at complaining and saying, but what is it, why, we have to really develop this is asking why. And I think this starts when you are 4, when you are 3, when you are 2. And you should never tell a child, do not ask more questions. You should say, just ask more questions. But sometimes we silence people from thinking, no?
Miss, I would just like to make an interjection there. When I read Dina's story, which is the only one I read because, I was waiting to read the publication in hand, so I did not have the chance to read it before. But he sent me his over email as soon as he won. And I read it and I felt uncomfortable because I felt that, there's so much more to say, but you only said it, you only said this.
Yeah.
And I felt uncomfortable in some ways because it forces you to think. For instance, for me, I don't want to see a story right away, but for me, it brings me back to my reality when I go to my local Chinese store and I see the kids there beginning to talk Creole, with their grocers, but then he took it to another level where the person is now defending his dad.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, defending his dad for us calling him, Chinese man, and trying to belittle, as he calls it, the contribution that they're making to our society. Yeah. And so for me, it brings me back because it said, what if that does happen, and it will happen because that's our society. These persons will now learn Creole and they will be able to express more, I think, more rightfully so what their contribution and their position in the society is. And so I think that's the interesting thing about literature, the work of literature. Authors, especially the creative writers, because I'm more into the academic works and I rarely do read our local literature, but when I do, I'm very fascinated. I say, what have I been doing, just reading the history books, but there's so much more to learn from about the creative writing process. And I think at this point, I'd just like to just mention some of the other winners that we've acknowledged through this year's publication. And so in the flash fiction, we do have Dino's piece on We the Belizean, but there's also the other piece called The Wait, and this is by Tisa Grant. And there's The Escape by Miss Ivory Kelly. In the poetry genre, we have Mary Gomez Parham. Her poem is entitled Being Dead in San Pedro, The Immigrant's Lament Inside Her Head, Sonnet for an Aging Husband. Miss Ivory Kelly is also our second place winner in the poetry genre of Poems and Moms, a Belizean poem, Write Me a Letter, Won't You, a poem for Ivory Joseph. And then we have Miss Jacqueline J. Burns with her poem, Wells, Time, Unlabeled Sirens. And this is also accompanied with a short description of our authors, and they've been also to include study guide questions that will help, particularly the high school, the division in thinking more.
That's
more
something
critically.
we noticed in the publication. I think that's really great. What prompted you to move in that direction of having, because we can read it, but we don't always look deeper into it?
Well, I think for schools, for especially high school teachers, it's very useful to have a piece of literature that can be extended on or discussed in different ways. So this is just a guide, it's just ideas for them to discuss. Because all the things that we've been talking about can come out after reading the stories. So there is a lot more. And of course, literature shouldn't be just taught 1 hour a week or whatever, no? It can permeate social studies, it can be taken into other directions, and using this piece to discuss other issues in other areas of the curriculum. So this is why we decided to do it, and we are partly successful. Some schools have embraced it right away, and
This is
others.
the third book you're published.
This is the third literary prize. It's been alive for 3 years, and we are thinking now about a young youth. I don't know how it doesn't have a name yet. Under 18, the under 18 literary prize.
Rolando said something that I think is so important, and I always think that's a really great moment when you read something and you're just left unsettled for some reason. You know, you turn over in the middle of the night in bed and it's still just a nagging thought. I love it. I hate it and I love it, I should say. And that fascinates me that you're saying that about his story, that it makes you uncomfortable, it makes you think, and it makes you unsettled. Dino, was that the aim from the onset? That you didn't want, because sometimes you could write a story and have somewhat of a resolution or a lesson in the end, but leaving that type of reaction is a different aim.
I wanted to provoke thought. I wanted people to analyze their actions and see how they could change to be more tolerant towards people who are different from them in terms of in terms of socioeconomic status, in terms of culture, and so forth. So my aim really was just to address an issue that does exist and really get Belizeans to think collectively and move towards a direction that would really ensure that we progress as a nation.
Why did you choose the Asian community?
Why the Asian? Because
we know there are issues with, let's say, there's been issues with the Garifuna and Creole. We've heard of how people treat the migrant population that come in, or the thoughts we have, I should say. Many different ethnicities face different challenges. Why the Asian?
The Asian community, because we tend to believe that when someone prospers economically, that they don't face discrimination. And that isn't the case, as we've seen. What also occurred to me was in Germany during the right before World War II, the Jews were very prominent as well. They were successful in business, and see what intolerance and ignorance led to. I wouldn't want something like that happen here.
You know, Rolando referred to you as the next literary giant. He didn't say it directly to you, but he said he wanted to see what the next literary giant was. This is like a trailer to a movie, the flash fiction. What's next for you in terms of writing?
I want to continue writing short stories. I like short stories. I read everything from short stories to novels to academic works. I've worked with NICH before. Rolando was actually my supervisor at one point, and he had me reading very technical articles and whatnot. But for now, I want to when it comes to writing, I'm in my early 20s. I want to focus on not only flash fiction but short stories in general. I want to make my life fun right now. I already.
You don't want to dedicate all that time to an actual book.
Yes, but right now I am looking into graduate school.
Okay.
I want to pursue a degree in international relations, and eventually become an expert in policy so that I can come back and really influence national affairs.
Do you think that you said you plan to continue doing some more flash fiction and short stories?
Yes.
You're a young person, and the reading culture, which is weak right now, I won't say non-existent, is focused around a book called Facebook.
Yes.
And Twitter, where the attention span, the writing is condensed.
You're dating yourself. It's Snapchat.
Oh, it's
Facebook,
Snapchat.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. You see, we'll even worse.
Yeah.
Do you think that by writing in this format, flash fiction and the short stories, that it could actually pull back some of the tide of young people who might be a bit disconnected and turned off by seeing something that is longer than 50 characters?
I think so, and you've actually made a very good point. On Facebook, we're used to reading very short, when someone posts a post of maybe 100 words, we're used to reading short, words in a very condensed way. So I think that by really narrowing your thoughts and focusing on something, and making it very creative, we can get some people to become interested in reading. But I'd also like for young people to challenge themselves. I'm actually surprised there's a new bookstore in San Ignacio, Bacabush Books.
Oh, nice.
And it's located downtown. They have a Facebook page, an Instagram page. And my friend is the owner, and sometimes I would walk in and say hi. And you do see a lot of people there, especially young people. So I was very happy to see the response that she's been getting from the public.
Okay.
A lot of times, academically, we look past who we are. Like you were making references to what happened in America and what is happening over there, and I think maybe only 1 or 2% look inward and say we also have that problem. I don't want to bypass the value of the academic foundation that you have and you making that local. How are you able to not look past what is happening in Belize and simply focus on what is happening outside?
It was, repeat the question? Does that mean?
Okay. Most of the times, we have a problem, for example, with immigration in the States. We have immigrants they're building a wall over there. But in Belize, even though we're teaching history in the schools, literature in the schools, nobody really says, okay, how does that same problem exist here?
Okay.
How were you able to translate from what is happening outside to say, listen, I also have that same problem. It might not be in the same shirt, but it's the same problem. And let me write about it.
How I was able to, I think I would have to attribute that to my education and the kinds of conversations that I had with my lecturers at the University of Belize and even at home. But even more so at the University of Belize, the history department had some very good lecturers. Mr. Ross, I believe he appeared on the show not too long ago. Joseph Samson, he was here not too long ago as well. We have Dr. Cal, Francine Sabal, very good lecturers. And they really they really presented challenges to us that made us critical of Belize and more analytical in terms of local and foreign affairs.
UB's working?
Well, I do appreciate that, and when he says analytical especially, and that's where I had loved the fact that they had the questions after the stories to kind of provoke conversations. So the literary prize is only one part of Book Week. We do have to get into the lineup that you have for the rest of the week, and where people can participate, right?
First, I would like to say we're launching the book today, and because we're focusing very much on Dino today, because he's the winner. Very young and he's the winner. But all the other authors will be at the launching today, so we'll have an opportunity to ask them questions, and all of them are excellent writers. We know about Ivory, we know about, Tisa is new to me, but Mary Gomez Parham, she's an excellent poet, and Jacqueline, and of course Ivory. But Book Week has started yesterday, and we had a great day in Kikoka. It was really, really a very good day for everybody, because not only was well organized, but it was also very well attended. So we had a lot of budding writers, like from Standard 6, that's where the idea of a youth prize came in. And also the high schools participated, no? So we had, in addition to that, we had booksellers, so the booksellers were all there to show their wares. And then today we don't have anything, we're taking a break.
You launch the book, though?
We're launching the book, yes. It's part of also a Book Week. And then tomorrow it's in San Ignacio. So we'll have one day in San Ignacio. The highlights are many. We are actually giving the prizes to the winners. We are presenting the book again, but basically what we're having is activities for children, for families, and we have a symposium on publishing that we are hoping it will, inspire. That's tomorrow. It's supposed to be morning and afternoon.
Yeah, 9 to 3:30.
9
Where?
to 3:30 at the Welcome Center. Everything is
Cayo.
happening at the Welcome Center in Cayo.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
And what is the literary evening at Artsmosphere?
Artsmosphere is a new space in Cayo, and it's run by a group of people, and they are very active, and they are actually presenting 2 plays. One of them is one that we published. It's When My Father Comes Home. It's a very current, very old. It was written many years ago, probably in the 60s or 70s, but it's still a very current.
Is Cayo having a renaissance or something? Bookstore opening?
Yes,
Things
yes.
happening, books being launched,
Yes.
symposiums. Belize City, please bring us along.
Next year, we have to come
Belize
back.
City has Image Factory, if we really want
Yes,
to. Yeah.
exactly. You do have spaces, yes. Yes.
It's so
So-
great to have this conversation this morning, and I know it's only a snippet of time. The book launch, you said people do have access to the other authors and
Yes,
poets.
it-
Where is
today-
that going to be?
Image Factory, 10 o'clock today.
10 o'clock. So if you want to ask Dino more questions, or the other winners, Mary Parham won the prize, the poetry prize,
yes.
and then you had the second and third place for both categories as well. And if we want to purchase the book, what's the cost and where can we get it?
Find a bookstore. Well, Image Factory, they are not pricey, they are in the range of $15.
Okay.
Oh, wow, that's excellent.
So, yes, so you can buy them there, and then, you can try your luck in other places, but basically it's going back to the supermarket.
Yeah.
Brothers, it's the one that carries books
just-
consistently. I don't think they will have it. They seem to be moving into other directions.
Okay.
Yeah.
More into
Brothers usually
stationery
has
and
the
Brothers
the
usually
local-
has a good display, yeah. And
An Image
maybe that's the
Factory.
answer. People don't want to go to 10 different places. They want to go to one place and get everything.
Yeah.
So that will be
Yeah. All
maybe
right.
the future.
Well, thank you so much for coming this morning and for sharing all that you're doing. Best of luck to the association. And of course, keep up the good work, Dino.
Thank you
Congrats
so
again.
much. Thank you, Marlene.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be making cookies with Kisses and Bites, so stay tuned.